Yeah, nobody comes in the summer as much. That's right, they're all watching you on TV. Hi. Oh, Julie Marks. Yeah, Matt, or the carpet. Yeah, yeah, we're all good. We got switched and then, it's pretty little. Like dates.
Can some of that
Wanted
fit
it
in
not
there?
to say liquors.
Are we gonna keep them?
It's gonna be shortly. Maybe already gonna get the pop up.
Big thing I think Julie talked about today.
Julie and I have been in school times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, no.
You saw my email on 12.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, we should be good.
I got my keys.
Well, unless the auditors catch it and move it.
Yeah,
That's still a possibility. And that's what I was trying to tell you on the 12th.
yeah.
Because if they catch it, they'll move it regardless. We don't have a.
Is that what you're talking about, the carpet or you're talking about?
Yeah, the seven, both, all of it.
Okay, 'cause there was something else, I think, equipment's getting delivered tomorrow. Something that has to go back. That was through Julie.
There's the weight equipment, there's the PSN stuff, there's the volleyball standards.
Volleyball standards are fine, they're coming
I
before
go, it's
July.
sort of the storm.
So they'll be here. Yeah, yeah, and then, yeah. So,
I mean, we're at risk. That's
No,
all
I
I'm
know.
trying to.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'm like, nailed it.
All right, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors at the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. And ask our superintendent to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you, everyone. We recognize the quorum of the board. We have 5 members present in person. We have 1 member, Tani Schmidt, who's attending by phone, and also Nancy Justman has an excused absence, so she will not be participating tonight. Moving on, we have our agenda in front of us, and I would make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Thanks, Aaron, for the second. Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Oh, pardon me, because we have a member remotely, I have to take the vote by roll. So I actually almost remembered it in time. All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Schmidt. Ooh, I think Tanya's there.
Hello? Oh,
that's right.
I didn't, did you say Tommy?
I did.
Okay, I'm sorry. Or you said Miss Schmidt. Okay.
Yes.
I thought you said Michelle. Okay, yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Ms. Dove?
Yes.
Ms. Justman's absent. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Ongert? Yes. Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Great, the motion carries. And the next item then on our agenda is recognition of tennis state qualifiers. And so we have Aaron Felber who will walk us through this item. We're excited to hear the news.
We told Ben he has to give a huge speech to everybody. here
Fantastic,
today.
that's
He's
right.
a little nervous. So I have the easy job. I just want to congratulate Ben Benbenek on behalf of West Bend West for qualifying for states, and then you're going to hear a little bit more about the details from Coach Ryan Benark. So congrats to Ben and his entire team. Ben, you get to go stand right in front.
Stand right?
Yeah.
Stand right in front of Tommy's name.
Would you be more nervous for that?
You can stay right.
I should.
Stand right next to Coach. You're fine. We won't make you come all the way up front.
So this is Ben Benbenek, huge tennis family. Just kind of want to thank you guys for being such an integral part of this. Ben's been the face of the entire program since I joined 3 years ago as a freshman. He got respect of all his peers, seniors. He was our number one guy as a junior, or as a freshman. He was only about this big. So he's grown a lot over the past couple of years, not just with the game, but just mentally understanding the game a lot more. So, I mean, just the amount of effort he puts in. When I'm not there, he hits at the club as much as he can, finds others to hit with as well. So he does everything he can, not even, just with the program, but in school in general. He has high aspirations going on from West Bend. So with that, he had a really good season. We'll keep it kind of short. The only guys he lost to throughout the entire season all made it to state, and the majority of them were ranked in the top 16 in the entire state. A lot of those guys he played more than once. So we got some good experience there. However, he made it to the state tournament. He played his way in. He wasn't given a special pass, not a special qualifier or anything like that. He definitely worked for it. When he got to state, he won his first round pretty handedly against someone that he wasn't able to see throughout the season, conveniently. We have a pretty rigorous schedule, pretty tough. So then he played the next match, the number 7 guy in state. So a little bit up and down there as far as, getting a feeling of, how am I supposed to play at state. What he did really well is, I understand most of you probably don't understand tennis. Okay, so that's good. What he was able to do against the number 7 guy in state was hit a ton of winners off of him, which that guy has not seen for the majority of the year, talking to their coach. So you didn't know about it, but there was some serious concern about how they were going to go about trying to fix that. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to get enough of those in. But again, just great experience for him and something for him to look forward to next year. I can't thank him enough, and we look forward to having you next year leading the way. Thank you, guys.
Ben, I think you heard it here. Mr. Ongert probably can hit balls with you. I'd like to see that. We'll see how much Mr. Ongert knows about tennis once Ben's done with him.
Great. Well, Ben, congratulations, and thanks also for your leadership in the program. Fantastic. All right. We've come to the public participation portion of our agenda. Is there anyone in the group? I have not received any comment cards. Is there anyone who wishes to participate in public participation? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, we have minutes from our June 7, 2021 regular board meeting and executive session, revenues and expenses in the aggregate, July 20 through May 20, 2021, ratification of 2 certified staff contracts, 2 certified staff resignations, and there are no retirements. I would move approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Kurt, for the second. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. I will call the roll starting now. Ms. Dove? Yes. Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Justman is absent. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Repholz?
Yes.
Thank you. That's 601 absent. All right. The consent agenda passes. We're on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Thank you. As you know, we've been enrolling in summer school. Our summer school program started last week. Our enrollment is just a little over 1,300 students, and we are currently still enrolling band camp and jumpstart programs. So those occur just a little bit later or in stages throughout the summer. So those enrollments are still open. Right now, we're trending at about 85% of what we had seen pre-COVID, and we'll look at that as once we get all the enrollments in and just see where we set. But again, we anticipated to be down a little bit just based on everyone needed a break. And people were looking forward to seeing family that they hadn't seen maybe over the last year and taking some well-deserved vacations. So our programs had started successfully. We had a previous discussion around calendar. We were looking to see if they were going to do some flexibility. That flexibility was not going to come to pass, so we didn't engage in those conversations. Our calendar stands, and we'll go forward as there. So just so you have that update. And then also in the news, you'll see every now and then they're talking about some potential legislation around a critical race theory, or they call it CRT in the news. I've fielded just a couple questions from families. Just short answer is no, our curriculum doesn't include teaching a theoretical framework like that. In relation to that, it's sometimes just called CRT in the news, but you'll see that they're introducing some legislation around it. I know we would continue to advocate for local control in our curriculum. That's something that would have to come before the board in its standards adoption, in curriculum review, et cetera. So just to reiterate that. Happy to put something on a future agenda if the board wants to dig in further. I think sometimes it sparks discussions or questions. So just let me know if you would like a presentation or discussion around how we do talk about equity in our schools, or if any family or community member has a question, please simply just reach out to me. Happy to answer that and tell you how we approach that in our schools or discussion. But I've seen it as a headline in quite a few newspapers or news articles, so in case anyone was wondering about that. This week, we've been doing interviews for teaching and learning administrative positions. We're really happy about our candidate pools. It's always an exciting time of the season to meet new people, have them show interest in our district, and participating in serving our students in our community. East administrative team is screening their applicants for athletic director right now, and if you're interested in participating in that process, if you're an East athlete, if you're a parent at East, reach out to John Graff, the principal. He's overseeing that process. But in the interim, we do have Mr. Dan Domak, a retired athletic director, who's just helping with that transition. So we make sure our student athletes get the support that they deserve during any onboarding throughout the selection process. So again, reach out to Mr. Graff, the principal, if you're interested in participating. I know they'll be including athletes, coaches, and families in that process. Speaking of state championships, our East tennis players, we had some students qualify for state as well. They couldn't be here this evening, so they'll be recognized at an upcoming board meeting. But also a good luck to East and West track and field athletes. They're going to compete Saturday at the WIA championships, while the state championships for all spring athletics were just a little later than what we're used to. It's still really meaningful for our students to have the opportunity, especially our seniors. So while they did graduate in June, they're still representing our school district, so we appreciate that. Some exciting news, handwritten in my notes, hot off the press. East Baseball won 10-0 this afternoon. They went on to a doubleheader, which they won right before we walked into this meeting, 3-0. They're heading to state. Their first game is on Friday, so congratulations to East Baseball as well. So some pretty exciting news. And just a reminder, our district is always looking to hire talented individuals. So a lot of people sometimes just think of, sometimes we think of hospitals as nurses and doctors, and that's about it. You don't think of all the many staff behind the scenes. Same with school districts. It's not just teachers and principals. There's a lot of support staff positions and different unique career opportunities in schools. So I would encourage you to visit our website, the Staff and Careers and Work for WBSD tab, to look at the many opportunities. We talked about athletics. There's different coaching availability, seasonal employment if you're coming home from college, and Go Right Way is having their hiring event next Tuesday, June 29th from 11 to 2 at Washington County Fair Park. So if you ever wanted to drive a big bus, they've got a driving course set up and are ready to go. So again, a lot of opportunity and an exciting time in school districts as you kind of get ready for that next year that's ahead. Any questions?
Questions for the superintendent? Thank you for your report. All right, we'll move then on to action items. And our first action item is presentation of the annual at-risk plan. And Laura Jackson will walk us through that. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, school board members. Thank you, Superintendent Wimmer. We are here tonight to talk about the annual at-risk plan. The annual at-risk plan was presented to the curriculum committee in our curriculum committee meeting earlier this month. Ms. Dove presented on that, talked about that in the update later that, well, on June 14th. Well, no, June 7th was our meeting, correct? And, and so she spoke about the plan at that time. We come to the board every year for approval of the at-risk plan, and hence the title Annual At-Risk Plan. And this year, there are some changes to the plan. The changes center around a focus on improving the participation, improving the outcomes and the communication. So one of the changes to the plan is that we now specify that students who complete the GEDO2 program will receive a regular West Bend diploma. The importance of that is we hear about people who get their GED. The GED 02 is an option 2. It's run through the school district, and the students who complete that receive a regular high school diploma from our high schools. A GED is something that students earn later after the fact. And so it's important that we specify that in our procedures so that it's known to students and families as they enter that program, and they can refer back to that. We will also be improving our communication with parents when their child is showing signs that they may be at risk of not graduating on time from the high schools. So they're becoming credit deficient, or there are other reasons they're disengaging from school, and we're putting them in a plan to receive at-risk supports. So that we are improving our communication around that, as well as our documentation of the procedures when we do enroll a student in the at-risk program, and they have those supports scheduled in regularly, and we are goal setting with them specifically for those purposes of making sure that they graduate and address the things that are preventing them from maintaining a regular schedule for graduation. Additionally, as the team, the at-risk team has been looking at the programming for students, they're reviewing the curriculum that is used with at-risk students in specific curricular areas. So that work is ongoing and being revised. Other than that, the at-risk plan remains consistent with what we've had in the past. Do you have any questions about the at-risk plan?
I don't have the question, except what I appreciated the flavor of the plan is the support of students and their families. And I thought that was great, as opposed to policies and procedures talking about how the school is going to protect itself or defend. This is really about support of students and their families. And so I thought I would just mention that it's well written and geared in absolutely the right direction.
Well, thank you. I will make sure I pass that on to the at-risk team.
Any other questions from the board?
I'll move to approve the 2021-2022 annual at-risk plan.
I'll second. Paul?
Thank you. Motion and second to approve the annual at-risk plan. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see, Ms. Dove?
Yes.
And Ms. Jusman is absent. That motion carries 6-0 with one absent. All right. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, the Cuss Field reconstruction contribution. And Mr. Andy Sarno will walk us through that item. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Wimmer. Appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you. We have an opportunity. There's an agreement, a memorandum of understanding dating back to the summer of 2018, leading into the reconstruction of this field, both for the boys baseball, girls softball. Spoke about a $100,000 liability where we would make annual payments for that reconstruction. So a little bit of stake in the game, if you will. West Bend Baseball Association, and just side note, had a $35,000 commitment. On such a dollar amount, we do have in the year, that fiscal year that's ending, we do have a budgeted dollar amount that I'd recommend that full payment be made at this point in time, just not to carry this outstanding liability. Get it off of our books, allow them the flexibility. So with your authorization, I'd be happy to discuss the matter further, but with your authorization, we could make that happen.
Andy, we're able to do this out of current revenues. We're not dipping into any type of safety net or rainy day fund?
Correct.
And really, the alternative of hanging on to the money, if we invested it, I'm assuming we would earn close to zero.
0.07% right now. It did increase by 0.2%, so yeah.
No, and I think that's important because certainly with the reconstruction going on, they have current obligations to pay. And so I think this is in the spirit of community support. So I'm supportive of this and would vote in favor of, or I should say, I guess, make a motion to, let's see if I've got the wording here correct. I move to recommend the payment of $100,000 toward the reconstruction of Cuss Field at Regner Park per the memorandum of understanding that exists between the City of West Bend and the West Bend Baseball Association. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Motion and second to approve the payment of the full $100,000. I'll pause. Any additional discussion?
Maybe I got one additional discussion, just for clarity's sake. Both our East and West baseball teams plan on playing at this park when it's finished. Is that the case still?
And softball.
And
So that's
softball.
an addition. So the field used to be just for baseball boys. But with the turf infield, movable bases, et cetera, it can be reconfigured. So it'll be softball and baseball.
Well, that's outstanding.
The pitcher mound gets flipped over for the different lengths and, yep.
I remember at a board meeting, many of the West Bend Baseball Association members here and speaking in favor of us approving that $100,000, and they were very appreciative of that money that goes towards, is it a $2 million total project? 2.1, I think.
Something like that.
So anyway, I'm in favor of it.
Once this payment is made, is the memorandum of understanding purely financial, or does it spell out that softball will be played there, or?
At the time the memorandum of understanding was signed, it did not include that. Recent negotiations and discussions have included that construction to be to happen. So it does talk about use of the field. We still have the ability to use it. We can operate as admissions as well as concessions, which would be typical for a school district.
And in there, it doesn't restrict us, it just says that we have priority scheduling. And then the only other piece is that we would give them access to our turf machine so that they can vacuum the turf. They don't have that, but they can trailer up ours and take it over to the field to make sure we can prep it before games as well.
So once this payment is made, that memorandum of understanding doesn't just go away. There are some other agreements in it, and this would, financially, we're paying, the financial piece of it will be over, but there are still agreements in there that are still in place, and, yep, got it.
Infield
Thanks.
turf is not maintenance-free. The outfield will still be mowed.
Mhm.
So, yep.
And I think, again, this predates me being here, but it's one of those examples where we're mutually serving with our community partners. Right now, you've seen it's completely torn up, so all operations have moved over by us for the summer, and we're figuring out how to quadruple use of all of our fields into and throughout the summer as well. So we look forward to ongoing. I'm sure we'll continue to figure out ways to highlight that crown jewel of that area.
Is the goal for next season that it'll be up and running next
I think
season?
I met over at our current varsity baseball field with Mr. Ross and a couple other individuals, and it's our belief that even if they got going with planting, seeding the outfield, which would be grass, that you would not want to play on it this spring. So most likely, it would begin use in spring of ¡22.
Okay, that's what I'm,
Yep.
okay.
And we're
Yeah.
preparing, and we're making sure that the varsity fields at the high school site are is in good of condition as possible. The 134 games between now and August 15th, something like that. So it's been difficult, but we're doing what we can.
Excellent. Any other discussion? All right, I believe we did a motion in a second, if that's the case. So I will call the roll. All right, Mr. Ongert,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Justman is absent. Ms. Dove?
Yes.
All right. 6-0, absent. That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, you as well. The next item on the agenda, actually, we have several items related to compensation. We'll start with the Certified Staff Base Wages Agreement for 2021, 2022. And Mr. Lenny Hansen will walk us through that item. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for letting me join you this evening. We do have a number of items here. They're interconnected, but each also have their own nuances, so we'll go through them one at a time. So, as we do every year, Mr. Sarno and I engaged in collective bargaining over base wage negotiations with the West Bend Education Association, as we do each year. This year, we were happy with the timing of it. This is the right time in an ideal world to be going through this so that we can settle these pieces prior to when individuals actually start receiving compensation and we don't end up having to do retro pay and things like that. So this, in a perfect world, is the ideal time to do it. And thankfully, you know, the hard work of Mr. Sarno and the cabinet team have put before us a budget that we can deliver that is both balanced, which would include these compensation increases and maintain being balanced. So we're happy to share some details around that. We engaged in those negotiations. Those negotiations follow all of the stipulations of Act 10, which is legislation, you know, over a decade ago that kind of governs public sector collective bargaining. So they are, we're bound by a CPI number that comes from the WERC, which was 1.23% this year regarding base wages. So we engaged in that negotiation with the WBA, and we're able to come to an agreement, which we were happy to do so. We haven't come to an agreement in a few years here in the district. I know we have shared in prior years that we've had some great conversations of recent years, and I think we've built on that relationship to be able to come to an agreement. So we're a tentative agreement, at least pending your approval, to bring that before you today. The agreement, as well as the other pieces that we'll see for certified staff tonight, all fall within the framework laid out by the certified staff compensation model, which the board approved over a year ago. In that model, it really is designed to target certain areas that we especially want to focus for recruitment and retention, and also emphasizes the goal of making teaching in the West Bend School District a livable career that you can spend an entire career here doing. So in that compensation model, there's kind of 3 different layers of compensation. So those individuals who are in their first 5 years of teaching in the district are on our novice salary scale and receive jumps on that scale each year in those first 5 years. Then you have, at the opposite end, we have a salary ceiling number that the board votes on each year. The salary ceiling is currently set at $75,000. And when an individual has a salary at or above that level, they receive a portion of the across-the-board pay raise that's approved for everybody below that number. So in the proposal we have for you tonight, you'll see that there is a different number for those above that salary ceiling and those below it. So in the proposed agreement, those below the salary ceiling have a compensation increase of $664 for the 2021-2022 school year, and those above the ceiling have an increase of $336 as part of the agreement. All of this stays within that base wage definition provided by Act 10 and the WERC, and within the CPI amount provided by that. So we were very glad to have that agreement, and we're putting that agreement before you for recommended approval this evening. So questions from anybody?
Any questions, discussion?
I guess, Lenny, first off, thank you to you and Andy for the hard work in putting this together. This is always a difficult task to try to serve all the masters, and also appreciation to WBEA for coming to the table and reaching agreement. As you said, that's not happened in recent years, and I'm a believer in win-win negotiations, and the fact that we've reached agreement doesn't mean that a party left something on the table. I don't believe. I think this is exercised in good faith. And, you know, given what we've all gone through in the last year, you know, our teachers certainly went above and beyond, prepping for in-room delivery and virtual delivery and all the adjustments on the fly, the planning conversations, and we were able to deliver 180 days of instruction without having to shut down a single building. So certainly appreciate their efforts this year, and you know, the 1.23 number is nominal. We know health insurance is going up every year. We know that you know, certain expenses are groceries, gas, certainly lumber, et cetera, are up, and yet to be seen where we'll be next year. But appreciate the efforts in this particular negotiation. Can you give us just some frame of reference geographically, you know, our neighbors? How does this compare to what is happening elsewhere?
Yes, so we have seen other districts start to come to agreements as well. You know, I remember just seeing in the news graphic a week or two ago that I believe it was Grafton came to a 2% increase that they had talked about with their board. There's others that are right around that 1.23%. What we're seeing from the area is, you know, people are delivering on that 1.23% number that that we're putting before you today. Many of the same reasons that you cited. I mean, if there's ever been a year that we asked our staff to give above and beyond more than normal, this was the year. And I think you're seeing, not just in our region, across the state and across the entire you know, country, a sign of gratitude and you know, a purposeful intent to retain those people who have put so much in. You know, you've seen some districts not in this region, but in other states or other parts of the state that have, you know, taken some of these COVID dollars and given bonuses and things like that. And as nice as that is, that's not something that we're doing here. We're trying to stay within our confined budgetary limitations so that we ensure this is sustainable, right? So, because any pay raise that we give this year, you know, every pay raise each year builds on each other. So we're really trying to stay within that budget, and we feel that this proposal does that, and we're very glad that at the same time we're actually able to come to agreement with the WBA on a proposal that still stays within the budget and doesn't use one-time money in a manner that you know, we can't sustain long-term.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, I would make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 base wages agreement as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kurt. Motion and second to approve the base wages agreement as presented. Any final discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Rebholz.
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Justman is absent. Ms. Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Dove.
Yes.
Mr. Ongert.
Yes.
And Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
All right. That's 6-0, 1 absent. The motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is certified staff supplementary compensation 2021-2022.
Sure. So the first item we talked about is a piece that we negotiate and so forth. The remaining pieces are not items that are negotiated. They are decisions made at the administrative level around compensation to ensure good recruitment and retention of our staff. So when looking at our total salaries for certified staff and trying to stick to that 1.23% of CPI, supplemental compensation is something that our salaries have kind of always been part of, and this increase in supplemental compensation ensures a true 1.23% increase for our certified staff. So going back all the way to 2011 when Act 10 went into place, our district and every district has separated base wages from supplementary compensation, and when you put those together, you get the total salary of a certified staff member. So the increases proposed, which still equal as a percent of total salary 1.23%, are again these are again divided up by that below the salary ceiling number and above the salary ceiling number. So those below that salary ceiling, it's $336 per employee, and those above the salary ceiling, it's $264 per employee. So this piece is totally separate from the first element, but as an employee, if I'm a teacher in the district, I'm going to look at these through kind of a combined lens, and because obviously any individual is going to look at their total salary, through that lens as an individual and how they, how it affects their pocketbook and whatnot. So that is what the purpose of this component is.
And this truly gets to that 1.23. This is not, again, above and beyond CPI. This is what makes it CPI.
Right. So when you take all of those salary numbers all together, all the additional pieces, and you take the actual amount that we spend on teacher salaries, this gets us to that number.
Mhm. And again, this money total is about $140,000 this year, is coming out of our normal annual budget. This isn't special COVID dollars. This isn't some special one-time bonus using COVID dollars or anything like that. This is living within the framework of our normal annual budget.
Correct. Just like the first piece that we talked about, exact same situation. We're very mindful of ensuring that whatever we do with compensation is always sustainable from a recurring standpoint, because whatever we give in raises, we're locked in then long-term as good stewards to our employees. So yes, this stays within that budget and doesn't try to play games with one-time money.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the certified staff compensation pay proposal as presented.
I'll second.
All right, thank you for the motion and second. Motion and second in favor of approving the certified staff supplementary pay proposal as presented. Any final discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Justman is absent. Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ms. Dove?
Yes.
Mr. Repholz?
Yes.
Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Mr. Swiger votes yes. Mr. Fisher, sorry.
Yes.
That is 6-0, one absent. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on then to the next item, which is support staff compensation, 2021, 2022.
So the next couple pieces you're going to see still stick to that same CPI number. It kind of guides what the decisions we make as a staff to ensure equitable distribution of our staffing resources across all of our employee groups. So support staff, the number of support staff employees actually almost equals the number of certified staff employees. We employ a lot of support staff who are just as critical in making sure our day-to-day operations continue to run smoothly and that we can deliver our program. So the proposal that you see before you has two components. The first is a 1.23% wage increase for our support staff, or a 30-cent per hour increase, whichever is more. We followed this same type of either-or model the last couple of years. This would be, I think, the third year that we have followed that. That allows us to really maintain a competitiveness at the lower end of our salary schedule. As I'm sure you're all aware, there are many positions that are extremely competitive in the job market right now, particularly entry-level positions in a number of areas. And if we don't work to keep those floors of those wage scales growing, we will quickly lose that battle in the job market. So there's that piece. And then the second piece actually is even more specifically targeted at that exact issue, and that is around our part-time custodial staff. So we have seen an erosion of our competitiveness in the market in recruiting part-time custodial staff and retaining them. Therefore, we are proposing a increase for part-time custodial staff of $1.10 per hour. That's for all of them. So it would increase our starting salary for part-time custodials from $11.90 per hour to $13 per hour. We did conduct a market analysis and felt that was the right number to move up to. Is it the final number? We don't know till we see the data on our recruitment and retention, but without taking too big a leap, we felt that we needed to make a jump to that degree in order to enhance our competitive position in the job market. So in order to then ensure fairness and equity across our part-time custodians, The proposal calls for that $1.10 increase for all of our part-time custodians to ensure that everybody takes a similar jump. We don't have a huge range in wages between our new employees and our most tenured part-time custodians. So our most tenured part-time custodians are in like the $15 per hour or so range. So you don't see maybe the wide gap that you see elsewhere. And that's where we feel that $1.10 increase across the board for all of them is quite appropriate.
Well, I think based on what I'm hearing out in the commercial marketplace, I can understand the need for an increase to $13 an hour. When you look at starting wages at some basic restaurants, it's often that or higher. So I certainly can understand that, and that certainly appears reasonable to me. To follow up on an earlier question that Joel had asked, this again is part of our planned budget. It's within our means. Can you just comment on that as well?
Absolutely. So yes, every item we're bringing you today, including this one, is built into our regular recurring budget. No using one-time money tricks or anything like that in order to balance the budget. This is truly looking at it from a multi-year perspective. How do we have a sustained compensation approach? And this falls within that budget exactly as well.
Any other questions?
I'll move to approve the 2021-2022 support staff compensation proposal as presented.
I'll second. Aaron?
Thank you. Motion and second to approve the support staff compensation is presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, as soon as I find my roll sheet, I will call the roll. Let's see, Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Ms. Justman is absent. Ms. Dove?
Yes.
Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
All right, that is 6-0, 1 absent. That motion carries. All right, and then we have administrator compensation for 2021, 2022.
So similar to the last discussion, sticking again with that 1.23% CPI number, we propose a increase of that degree for the eligible administrative staff. Again, this is a piece that falls within our normal recurring budget. Big gratitude to Mr. Sarno and his team who have worked to look at this from a multi-year perspective and a sustainable perspective from the outset. We build our budget knowing there's a lot of things that are going to increase, right? There's utilities, there's other costs, there's materials and things like that. Paul referenced the cost of certain, building materials and that have exploded, right? We build those expected increases in, but we also look at knowing that we have to allocate some amount earlier in our budgeting process for compensation. If we don't take that approach and we just see what's left over at the end and see what, for lack of a better term, scraps are left, we won't have a good compensation offering and we won't be able to retain and recruit our employees. So a big thank you to the Finance Department for the work they put in ahead of time to really build something sustainable. Even in the light of right now, we don't know exactly what the state budget is going to deliver for us. We plan in kind of a worst case scenario type approach, and then if the state budget comes through in a positive manner, then we find better, even more ways to support kids in success. So this again falls into the same kind of budgetary constraints that we've discussed before, and this is a similar approach when you look at this from a global approach of the certified staff support and administrator and how we've divided up those resources the past couple of years. Same type of approach in terms of how we use the CPI for all of those groups.
Any questions? I appreciated hearing all these. It does appear very, very even and uniform, and I think that's very important. And also, thanks to you and the finance staff for pulling this together. This is obviously a lot of work. I will move to approve the administrator compensation increases as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second to approve the administrator compensation increases. Any final discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Dove? Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Justman is absent. Mr. Rebholz?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Ongert?
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt?
Yes.
All right. That also is 6-0, 1 absent. That motion carries. Thank you for your presentations tonight.
Thank you. I'm next up too. So.
Oh, very good. All right. Well, see, I should look. Apparently, I should look ahead on the agenda. Sorry about that. Oh, we have a discussion item. Micro endorsement compensation. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Mr. Hanson,
I'll
please
keep this
proceed.
one relatively brief. This is just for discussion. As you said, we would bring this forward for action at a future meeting. We talked about the certified staff compensation model that was approved a little over a year ago, and as part of that, we have expanded the number of expertise pay offerings. And what those are opportunities for our certified staff to gain additional expertise through accredited institutions in areas that we pre-approve for, because they're areas that our district needs. And then the staff members who complete those continuing education components then receive an increase in compensation in the form of a recurring stipend each year. So I'm specifically coming to talk about one that's been very successful in its early stages for us. So we have a partnership with two different universities for this, Concordia University and Cardinal Stritch University. And we're doing different things with each university. Concordia's offerings are more graduate credit level pieces, a lot of licensure programs and things like that, which you can also pursue in other universities as well for our model. But the other component is through Cardinal Stritch University, and there we're doing not graduate credits, but they're professional growth credits. They're a lower price point. They're a less, they're not as time intensive. They're a smaller piece that teachers have traditionally always done during summers and things like that going back even, decades. It's been a common piece of, that the university likes to offer additional opportunities for teachers to grow their professional knowledge without maybe it being the time in their life to pursue a whole degree program or something like that. So with Cardinal Stritch, we've been pursuing these professional growth credit micro endorsements where the employee completes new learning coursework. They implement what they've learned and then demonstrate that evidence to the instructor, and then they have students and then themselves engage in a reflection around that work. It's been a really great experience so far. What's made it even better is in the area of technology, we created our own custom-built micro endorsement around the use of technology in the classroom, which has always been valuable, but especially valuable even more so with in a pandemic world. And what's been really great is two of our own staff members have been the facilitators, creators, and teachers of those courses. So Mr. Tim Harder, our Director of Technology, and Mr. Curtis Marquardt, one of our instructional coaches, have partnered together actually in an adjunct professor role for the university and have been delivering these courses. So we were able to offer them for the first time this past spring, the first round of them. It's a 3-course endorsement, so you receive the increase once you complete all 3 courses. And it's been so successful that Cardinal Stritch has actually said, hey, could we take this and not only offer it just to West Bend School District employees, but we would love to offer this to any school district employee, because this is outstanding work, and having individuals in the field deliver that, they have just been really impressed by that work. The quality of these custom design courses we also know is exceptional because it's aligned exactly to how we do things here in the West Bend School District. So we really want to make sure that we're appropriately incentivizing participation in those courses. We also have some individuals right now who are developing some courses around social emotional supports that would be custom built, designed, and taught by West Bend School District employees. So the proposal is to especially incentivize these kind of custom-built courses, and to do that, the proposal is to increase the stipend that you receive in return for completing them from $250 to $500. So we're not talking about a multi-$1,000 increase for someone, but it's an opportunity for someone, especially maybe earlier in their career, where they're maybe they've gotten into teaching, gotten their feet wet, getting comfortable. What's that next step? Maybe it's not doing an entire reading licensure program, but what's my next step to push myself, as well as those individuals who maybe in our district have that master's degree, have those extra licenses, and they want to keep learning, but they're not going to go back for a second master's degree. So how do we continue to provide those offerings? And by providing an incentive like this, we're driving our staff towards content and teaching practices that we know are exactly what we're looking for here in the West Bend School District.
So I like the philosophy of it, and certainly, developing our own content so we get that level of customization and applicability. But at the risk of one, sounding critical, and two, sounding overly optimistic, is this the right class at this point in time? Facilitating remote learning, Superintendent, what do we see happening next year from a remote perspective? Will our teachers need to be doing as much remote, or maybe there's content in this course that is still applicable in person in the classroom in terms of leveraging technology? Maybe it's a rebranding of the class as much as anything.
So I could go first on that one. So honestly, that's the title of the whole endorsement. So I'll look at the exact courses here, but the courses themselves are actually more focused on bringing that technology to the environment, whether it is blended learning, whether it's remote learning, whether it's just used in the classroom. Honestly, we probably should rename it. We named it a year ago when that's the world we were in, and some of that is branding in order to make it enticing to people and what they want to learn about. When you look at the actual courses, which I'm bringing up right here, we have the first course, SRA 520 is the course number. It's Technology to Enhance Your Classroom with Synchronous or Asynchronous Group Collaboration and Peer Feedback Using Technology Tools. So like that, as that actual course title demonstrates, that's something you would do in class, or whatnot. The second course is Creating Digital Materials Accessible for All Learners. So that's more around your differentiation of your instruction using technology. And then that third course is again focused on blended learning. So how do you, flipping classrooms, things like that, so that the classroom connection as well as the work you're doing outside, homework, other pieces like that, the learning you do outside, work together. So when you actually look at the courses themselves, they're actually exactly what you're talking about. I think the overall title we came up with a year ago in terms of, all right, where are we at right now? I believe, and what do we call this at this point? But the actual coursework is right up the alley that you're looking at. Mr. Harder, he finally took a vacation, time, which is great. So he's actually I think he's with his kid taking him to an event right now. But he'd be happy to answer additional questions around what they've been able to accomplish with that course as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we appreciate the presentation. This is a discussion item, so we'll see it on a future agenda.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, for future agenda items for our board meeting calendar, let me pull it up here. We have one meeting upcoming, one regular board meeting in July, that's July 26th. Then in August, we have regular board meetings scheduled for August 9 and August 23. Are there any items any board member wishes to bring up for a future agenda, follow-up, or communication? And always keep in mind that even outside of the meeting, we can bring them to me or to the Superintendent Wimmer. All right, that takes us to the end of our agenda. And so unless there's anything else to be brought before the board, I would move to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Kurt. Motion and second to adjourn. Any final discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Rebholz.
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
Ms. Justman is absent. Mr. Ungert.
Yes.
Ms. Dove.
Yes.
And Ms. Schmidt.
Yes.
And Tani, thank you for participating remotely. We appreciate it. All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
You bet. Motion passes 6-0, 1 absent. We are officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.